Welcome to Engineering Success Profile Editions, and our special guest today is Mimi-Isabella, who is a materials engineer working at Sir Robert McAlpine. Hi Mimi, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm really excited to be here.
It's great to have you here, it really is. Can we start at the beginning? What was your route into the engineering industry?
So it actually started in 2012 when I first went to university.
Right.
So actually, no, I'll go back from when I was at school. Actually, when I was at school, I was not a fan of maths and physics at all.
Right.
I was a very average student. That GCSE, I think I got like a B in maths, a B in physics, and I didn't really plan to take it further than that.
Right.
And then, sorry. So then I got to A-level stage, and I knew I wanted to be a doctor. That was my life goal. I'd watched enough ER, I'd watched enough Holby City. I knew exactly where my life was going, and I was like, this is it, guys.
Yeah.
So I studied biology, chemistry, psychology, and religious studies,
Right.
because those were what I really enjoyed at GCSE.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, at A-level, I didn't meet the requirements to get into my medical degree. So I decided I'll study another science.
Right.
So I went to university, and then I think, when I first got there, it was a science that was related to medicine, actually. So when I first got there, I think about a month in, I was a bit like, I don't really enjoy this. This is not really what I wanted. But I said to myself, okay, I know that there's an opportunity that the university presents that if you do well in the first year, you can progress to medicine. So I said, okay, I'll stick it out.
Right.
A few more months down the line, I was like, I still don't enjoy this. So I said to myself, if I don't enjoy this, which is close to medicine, I'm not going to enjoy my medical degree at all, because it's the same thing. It's the first, I think it's the first 3 years. So then I was about to drop out. I wrote my letter, because at my university at the time, you had to write a letter why you're dropping out.
Right.
So I wrote that letter and I went to the registration office, but then I saw a friend, actually. So my friend, I think I met him a few weeks ago at like a social event.
Right.
And he said, what are you doing? So out of shame, I was a bit like, oh no, I'm just handing in my coursework. It was a massive white envelope I had.
Right.
And he said, what are you doing after? And I said, do you know what? I'll hand in my coursework later. And he said, oh. He said, so what are you doing now? I said, I have a lecture break, and my next lecture's in 2 hours. He said, oh, just so you're not bored, why don't you come to mine? I said, oh, okay. I didn't bother asking him what he did, because I think I was in a mindset where I just really had enough of my own degree that I didn't really mind what he did. I just wanted to kind of sit there.
Yeah.
So I went in to his lecture, and there was 2 women at the back who were literally like hoods up, huddled at the back. You couldn't even see them.
Right.
And then there was like a sea of men at the front. So me and my friend sat down, and I turned to him and I said, what degree is this? But he didn't really, he wasn't able to say, because the lecturer started teaching, and it was civil engineering.
Right, okay.
And they were doing a lecture on like bridge design and construction methods. So I wrote 3 pages of notes. Bearing in mind, I was on my old course for about 6 months, but 3 pages was the most I'd ever written in that 6 months.
Right.
So it really did say something.
Yeah.
And then towards the end of the lecturer approached me and he said, I've never seen you before. Then I looked around and I was like, yep, I'm one of 3 women in the room. You've definitely never seen me. And he said, have I heard of civil engineering before? I said, no, I didn't even know what an engineer was, because I went to a sixth form where it was all girls, so engineering wasn't the top of their agenda or anything like that.
Yeah.
So he said I should take a look into civil engineering. So I think about 15 minutes of persuasion, I changed course straight away, and I left uni and went somewhere. And that's how I got into it.
Right. That's a great story. That is a great story, that.
Thank you. No, it's just that little segment of my life just taught me a lot about taking risks, opening your eyes to various opportunities, and that there's so many routes to doing different things.
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't have maths and physics at A-level, and I thought by studying engineering and not having maths and physics, I was going to completely bomb, basically. But case, here I am today.
Yeah, brilliant. So how did you become then involved in materials engineering?
So when I got to Portsmouth, I decided, that's university I went to, sorry. I decided to cover all of the foundations of civil engineering, and one of them was called soils and materials. And in that you cover sustainable construction materials, so like your sands, your clays, concrete, and X, Y, and Z. So I really enjoyed that module, and I took that module through all the way to my final year.
Right.
So then in my final year, I decided that I really liked the concrete elements of the course.
Yeah.
So then I did my dissertation on concrete.
Right.
And that's kind of where it all really started to kick off for me, because your dissertation is a very autonomous piece of work. So it's all your research, all your findings, all your ideas, and essentially kind of your own opinion.
Yeah.
So when I was doing that, that's kind of where my love came for it. I was able to research at a high level and very intensely about concrete, and not just normal concrete, but different types of concrete. Yeah. So that kind of opened my eyes to the various different types of construction and the different industries I could go into just with concrete alone. So it was kind of from then I said, okay, I want to be a concrete engineer. Yeah. And that's kind of started.
Fantastic, yeah. So what is a materials engineer's role? What does your role entail?
So at Sir Robert McAlpine, my role entails ensuring that the materials that we are using are sustainable for the projects that they're being used on. Right. So if I'm looking at concrete, I'll look at the mix design and ensure that the mix design is adhering to the British standard, because as with a lot of sites, they have British standards. So concrete has two main British standards, which is the BS EN 206 and the BS 8500 Part 1 and 2. Yeah. So I ensure that all of our concrete mixes are adhering to those standards. Yeah. And also, if I'm looking at other materials, I don't just do concrete, I do other materials such as sand, clay, etc., etc. I ensure that those materials are adhering to the British standard as well. And if we are having issues with our materials on site, I give sustainable and cost-effective solutions to ensure that these materials can be used within our project. Right. Also within that, if there's a material on site that we can reuse, I ensure that that material is not sent to landfill and that we reuse it for our projects. Yeah,
fantastic. So what big engineering projects have you worked on, and how do you coordinate with the other disciplines in the design team?
So at the moment, actually, I'm working on HS2.
Yeah.
I'm their materials engineer there, but specialised in concrete production and quality management.
Right.
So with that, it's basically what I've kind of explained. I ensure that all of our concrete mixes are sustainable for what we're doing, that they will actually work. I look at materials testing. I ensure that when the concrete's poured, that we maintain, the physical appearance of the concrete, and etc. So with that involves other disciplines. So, for example, the concrete lining is for the tunnel. So you need structural engineers. You'll need your geotechnical engineers, because the tunnel's underground essentially. So you'll need your geotechnical engineers. We're also building a viaduct. So the viaduct is like a bridge. So you'll need your bridge engineers. We all kind of work together they design, I provide my concrete design, and we kind of mesh it together, I suppose, in very simple terms. We collaborate together in order to build these things. Yeah.
Right. So how long do you actually spend on site, and how long do you spend in the office then?
So it dependent on the project. So it depends on how much I spend in time in an office, but majority of the time I can do a lot of my work from office. But if a project says, okay, we need you to look at some of the materials on site, like what can we do with this? How do we deal with this? Then I'll go to site. Maybe about, in percentage wise, maybe 60-40.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
60-40, because I spend a lot of our time as well at our material testing labs.
Right.
But then again, that's also for my own learning. So because I only know about materials from university, I said, okay, I'm going to spend time at the testing lab to see how they test the materials and why we test certain things in certain ways. And also I learn from them what we do with those results and how those results can be used in design. So that helps me with my knowledge when I'm speaking to my geotechnical and structural engineers on why they're doing what they do. It just helps me understand on site too. It's great because we can all learn from each other.
Yes.
So what they don't know, I know. What I know, they don't know. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I guess there's a lot of regulations you have to adhere to. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And what would they be? Just the British standards, or is there more for particular materials or particular sites, particular conditions?
So the concrete has its own standards, being the BSEN 206 and the BS 8500 Part 1 and 2, and other materials such as clay, sand, gravels, etc. They have their own standards and testing standards that we have to adhere to.
Right.
So when I go to the testing facility, I ensure that they are adhering to these standards and making sure that they're testing things in the right way, and that they're and that when they produce us with a test certificate, that it's all been done correctly, and that also within the British standards, it also says the limits that the results that they give should have.
Right.
So when they provide us with our results, I can say, okay, that's correct because it says that that material has to be within these limits.
Right.
So it kind of gives us a way to kind of check what they're doing at the same time. So yeah, it works pretty well. But those are mostly the regulations that I adhere to anyway, apart from obviously sustainability ones. So HS2, for example, they want to be known as a good contractor or good client or whatever it is. So there's a number of health and safety regulations that we have to adhere to as well, because we are working directly in the community, and HS2 is definitely going to affect that community. So we have to ensure that we are adhering to those sustainability and health and safety standards in order to protect the community that we are basically infiltrating.
Yeah. So if I was looking for a position as a material engineer, what sort of companies should I be looking at?
So I remember when I was first starting, my manager at McAlpine, he actually sent me to a materials testing lab. So the labs that I was talking about earlier, where we were learning about the different material tests and what the results they produce, what we do with those results. Yeah. And I think that was really important for me because, again, at university, they can't go into that much detail because at the end of the day, it was a civil engineering degree. We have to speak about civil engineering in quite a broad sense. Yeah. So going into that lab actually really, really helped me understand like why we do those tests, the different types of tests, and how that the data affects what we're doing. So I would advise that people actually do starting a testing lab. Right. Because at the end of the day as well, I think a lot of people in civil engineering should understand materials, because without those materials, we're able to build what we're building. That's right. Yeah. And it's quite important to understand how those materials behave depending on the infrastructure that we are building. Yes. So, but I would initially start in a materials testing lab, definitely. Yeah. So even if it's for like a couple of weeks. Yeah. So what would the routes be into materials engineering? Is it purely all graduate, or is there apprenticeship schemes that do the same thing? In terms of that, I think because it's quite specialist, I'm unsure of all the routes, but I know that when I was applying for the job, they did say if someone has like a HND or a HNC, you don't have to necessarily have a degree. Right. And my manager also, he started from in the testing lab and he worked his way up. And he was telling me that's another way as well. And I know that my organisation also recruits apprentices as well. Yeah, and we have some apprentices on, maybe not specifically on all the materials, but on some of our materials aspects. So there's some apprentices there, and they necessarily haven't been to university. And they're all learning on the job, which I think is really more valuable for them as well, because they're actually working and getting directly that experience rather than going to university and still deciding what they wanted to do. So, yeah. There are numerous routes, definitely. Yeah. So what are the challenges? What challenges do you face being a materials engineer? I think one of the main challenges, which it's not a challenge, but it definitely affects the role, is that it's the advancements in modern technology. Right. So with these advancements in modern technology, that means that, well, I'm going to say concrete technology, for example. So we all know that concrete has an effect on the environment. So a lot of things about concrete are changing. So there's different, instead of using maybe cement, there's different materials out there you can use to, what's the word? Wait, what's that word? To replace cement. To substitute cement with. So it's actually keeping up to date with all of that information and knowing, okay, maybe we shouldn't use this, but we should use this one instead. And also, I think as well for me, because my manager is very, very advanced in what he does, he's been doing this for years. So sometimes I kind of sit there thinking, I don't know this. Like, oh, I guess because there's so much for me to learn, and there's so many new materials coming out. And I think that's mostly my challenge, that there's so much to learn and there's so much out there, which isn't a bad thing. No. It's not a bad thing, but it's just that there's a lot to learn, especially being on a massive project such as HS2. And because I've only started recently and I've come in the middle of the project, there's usually a long train of emails that I have to read through to understand what's going on. But it's usually one of the main challenges is there being a lot to learn. Yeah. So what's the most rewarding part of your job? The most rewarding part of my job is, from previous projects I've been on, for example, is seeing a project from start to finish. Yeah. And, you see it from the ground and it built all the way up, and you can kind of walk past. Like, for example, I worked on Amazon's headquarters in Shoreditch quite a while ago. Yeah. And I walked past it in Shoreditch quite frequently. and I look at it and I go, wow, I did that.
Yeah,
Like, wow.
yeah,
Well, maybe not by myself with a team of 50,
yeah,
but I definitely had a part to play in that. And, you know,
yeah,
it's nice walking past with my family and saying to them, oh, yeah, like I did that.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
oh, yeah, those stairs are really hard work. And, you know, this is what I did here. No, do you know what? It's mainly that keeps me going, and
Yeah.
knowing that that building may potentially outlive me.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what keeps me going. Definitely.
So I know you're involved in a lot of organisations outside of, you know, Sir Robert McAlpine, and you help promote engineering. So what advice would you give somebody starting their engineering career?
First and foremost, I would say be who you are. First and foremost, because at the end of the day, people will be more receptive to you if you're more your authentic self.
Yeah.
So be who you are, and be more and show that you're willing to learn, because I feel like on site as well, people are so open with all their experiences, and they really, really, really want people to understand what's going on. So I remember when I first joined site, not specifically at Sir Robert McAlpine, but at all other organisations I've been at when I was quite young in my career. Yeah. I still am, by the way. When I was quite young in my career, I was very scared to ask questions. I thought to myself, just because I have a degree in civil engineering, I should know it. But that's not the case. Like, what you learn at university and what you learn on site are actually two completely different things. And I think it's so important to ask questions. Number one, it shows interest. And number two, it's for your own knowledge as well.
Yeah.
Another one is to be bold. So being bold in the questions you're asking, being bold in the task that you're doing. So when you are doing a task, have the confidence to produce that work. I remember I used to have issues when I was back in my younger career, that I would kind of leave tasks to the last minute. I'd be working on them for weeks, but I'd leave it to the last minute to hand it in because I was so worried about what was going on. But it's very important to hand it in to get that feedback before the deadline, because there are certain things that engineers who are more experienced than you are would point out before you do. And that's the whole, you know, paying strong attention to detail that engineers need to have. So I think it's very important to kind of make sure you get that feedback, whether it's good or bad.
Yes, yeah.
And also not allowing your gender to affect you. So I get a lot of questions about what's it like being a woman on site. And this is not other people's experiences, because I understand people have very varying experiences on site. But I've never had any bad experiences on site. I've always felt like people have respected me being there. People have been really happy to see me there, actually. When I come on site, I'm like, hey, and they're like, oh my gosh, Mimi. So you know, it's quite nice. So, but you shouldn't allow your gender to hold you back from doing anything, especially to the women who are going to be watching this. A lot of people on site, well, the sites that I've been on, this is not anybody else's experiences. I've had various experiences, but people have been really, really willing to help me. There's a lot of things that I didn't know that people that are on site doing the trades that they knew, and they were willing to share that information. And I think it's great that we are able to collaborate together in such a way on these massive projects to learn from each other. So I think that's one of the things about gender, not having your gender hold you back. Another thing would be giving yourself opportunities, seeking them and asking for them. I know a lot of people are very shy to ask a lot of things. This is the thing with the questions again. I know people are very shy to ask for opportunities or to seek them, but I think it's quite important to kind of, even if they're external from work, how I feel that I manage being at my job as well is that I do a lot of things externally, because it kind of reminds me that this is why I love civil engineering, this is why I love engineering in general, because there's so many opportunities to showcase what you do. And I found a lot of opportunities, and a lot of opportunities have been presented to me. And obviously, if I have the time to do those things, I will definitely do them. And it's taken me along, it's got me quite far in my career pretty early on as well. And I think that's important, kind of getting yourself out there, showcasing to other people what you're doing as well. So those are my main bullet points on how people should enter the industry, and be open. Open to everything. You never know.
So a bit more generally now, you know, a lot of students will be watching this. Have you got any tips for them that maybe help their CV stand out? You know, it's a very crowded marketplace out there, you know, and have you got any tips that might help them in writing a CV? Yeah,
actually. So I think that one of them that always was drilled into my head when I was writing my CV was that no experience is useless. So a lot of people always ask me, oh, Mimi, I don't have any civil engineering experience or engineering experience in general, depending on what engineering they are. I don't have any engineering experience, but I say, but if you work part-time, there are a lot of soft skills that you gain from working part-time that are actually very relevant in the industry.
Yeah.
So for example, I worked at William Hill for 4 years before whilst I was at university.
Yeah.
And I gained a lot of experience and a lot of soft skills such as communication, working in a team, managing money, just little things, skills like that are actually very useful in my job now.
Yes.
On site, you work with a mass amount of people. So the skill I gained from working at William Hill is very useful here. But that's one of them. And I think number 2 is tailoring your CV to the opportunity.
Right.
So if you, for example, I'll use civil engineering because it's what I know. If you are applying for a materials engineering job, if there are certain modules you did at university that are about materials, I would really draw that out in your CV and what you've learned from that module.
Right. Yeah.
But definitely just tailoring it, ensuring that you get your CV and the job description and match them together, and to not send the general CV, because I feel like employers definitely know when you sent the same CV to everybody.
That's
because it's not tailored to the job. So
and what interview tips have you got for young people? Obviously, it's quite daunting to be interviewed. It can be quite a scary experience for some. Have you got any interview tips for people?
One of my interview tips mainly would be to practice. So I know due to the unprecedented times that we're in now, a lot of people are doing video interviews. So if you do have the time, maybe get on Zoom. I know on Zoom you can kind of meet in yourself, and maybe just talk to the camera and really practice the answers to the questions that you've prepared. And another interview tip I would give is using the STAR technique to answer the questions.
Right.
Because most interviews that I went to when I was graduating were based on competency-based questions.
Right.
And with competency-based questions, there's a technique called STAR. So S being the situation, T being the task, A being the action, and R being the result of that situation that you had. And I feel like you can apply that to a lot of the questions. So if you have that format, you'll have a very neat and very precise answer for each of the scenarios that they give you.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Mimi, thank you so much. That's it. We're done. Thank you very much for being part of it.
Oh, that was quick.
Yeah, seems to go quick, but there we go. Thank you for being part of it.
No, thank you so much. I really enjoyed that, actually. That was actually, better than I thought.